First impressions, broken glasses and library training. The moment Carol Bradford crosses the threshold of Lucy Carmichael's apartment, the carefully constructed atmosphere of refined anticipation begins its irreversible transformation into pure comic reality. Lucille Ball as Lucy has spent the preceding minutes arranging elephant bells from India, positioning an expensive abstract painting purchased with nearly a full week's salary, and rehearsing her own grammar so that she will not disgrace herself before a woman described in a letter as young, intelligent, refined, and pleasant. The door opens and the living embodiment of that letter appears, Carol, polite, slightly formal, carrying herself with the quiet dignity of a college graduate who has chosen the respectable profession of librarian. The first exchange is a study in mutual nervousness. Carol introduces herself with measured courtesy. Lucy, momentarily flustered, stumbles over her own name before recovering with the bright, slightly breathless warmth that is her signature. "I'm Lucy Carmichael. I was expecting you." The offer to help with Carol's belongings is declined with equal politeness, and the visitor moves to set her things down. It is at this precise instant that the physical comedy that defines the Lucy show asserts itself with classic precision. There is a step. Lucy has forgotten to warn her guest about the step. Carol trips, stumbles, and recovers with remarkable composure, offering an immediate apology for the inconvenience she believes she has caused. Lucy's mortification is instantaneous and complete. "I'm terribly sorry. I should have warned you about that step." Carol's reply is pure character. She is simply glad the accident occurred here rather than at the library, where the staff is very strict about noise. The line is delivered with such earnest sincerity that the audience understands at once that this woman measures the world by the standards of institutional, quiet, and professional restraint. Lucille Ball's reaction is a masterclass in facial comedy. Her eyes widen, her mouth forms a small circle of dismay, and then almost against her will a smile of reluctant admiration begins to form. She has invited a woman who considers a minor domestic tumble less embarrassing than the possibility of disturbing the silence of a public library. The broken glasses that follow deepen the portrait with exquisite economy. Lucy notices the damage and expresses genuine concern. Carol's response is one of the purest comic revelations in the entire episode. She always wears the frames without lenses. She has contact lenses, which she demonstrates with a small, almost shy gesture. When Lucy asks the natural question, why then wear the empty frames at all, Carol's answer is both logical and utterly absurd within the social codes of the 1960s. She wears them so that people will not think she is vain. The explanation hangs in the air for a beat, allowing the audience to absorb its perfect circularity. A woman who is sufficiently self-conscious about her appearance to hide her contact lenses behind empty frames is simultaneously so refined that she cannot bear the thought of being perceived as concerned with her looks. Lucille Ball's Lucy absorbs this information with the dawning realization that her new roommate operates according to a private moral arithmetic that is both endearing and faintly exhausting. What follows is one of the richest character monologues the series ever granted a supporting player. Carol, encouraged by Lucy's sympathetic listening, begins to describe the daily trials of library work. The speech is long, detailed, and delivered with the quiet intensity of someone who has held these frustrations inside for years. There are the patrons who cannot remember the title or the author's name of the book they seek. Carol must then walk shelf after shelf, book after book, suppressing the entirely human desire to tell them to drop dead. She does not dare, of course, because it is a library. The phrase "drop dead" lands with particular force because it is spoken by a woman whose entire demeanor suggests she has never raised her voice in anger in her life. Lucille Ball's reaction shots during this speech are models of generous listening. She nods, she leans forward, she allows her face to register both amusement and genuine empathy. The audience is invited to like Carol even as they begin to understand how difficult she may prove to live with. The story of the latter elevates the monologue into pure physical comedy of the imagination. Carol was high on a ladder, returning a volume to its proper place when some unseen patron simply removed the ladder and walked away, leaving her suspended. Rather than cry out and disturb the sacred quiet of the library, she waited until closing time before she would allow herself to yell. The detail is perfect. It establishes Carol as a woman whose consideration for others borders on the pathological. A person who would rather hang in midair for hours than risk interrupting a stranger's reading. Lucy's response, "You certainly are dedicated," is delivered with a mixture of admiration and the first faint tremor of alarm. When Carol adds that she likes to be considerate of other people, Lucy seizes the statement as confirmation that she has found exactly the roommate she hoped for. "That's just the kind of girl I was hoping to have for a roommate," she declares. And the sincerity in Lucille Ball's voice is absolute. At this early stage, she still believes that Carol's extremes of politeness and refinement will translate into harmonious domestic life. The conversation then pivots with the organic logic of good comedy into the territory of shared irritations. Lucy observes that the little things are important, that certain habits can drive a person batty. Carol seizes the opening with unexpected enthusiasm. One of the small things that drives her crazy at the library is the presence of loud finger wetters, patrons who moisten their fingertips with exaggerated sound before turning pages. The phrase itself is gloriously specific and faintly grotesque. Lucy immediately claims kinship, recalling a girl in school about whom no one could ever decide whether she intended to read the book or eat it. The shared laughter that follows is genuine and warm. For a brief moment, the two women occupy the same comic wavelength. Carol admits that she does not dare laugh at the library, and Lucy's understanding nod acknowledges the professional constraints under which her new roommate lives. It is at this point that the first clear signal of Carol's more explosive physical presence asserts itself. Lucy, seeking to offer hospitality, begins to clear a space for coffee. Carol sneezes. The sound is not a polite covered sneeze. It is a full-throated, room-shaking blast that Lucille Ball's Lucy greets with the classic double take of pure astonishment. "Bless you. Bless you." The repetition is necessary. One blessing does not seem sufficient for a sneeze of that magnitude. Carol attributes the eruption to an allergy, something in the air. When Lucy, with the instinctive problem-solving of her character, moves to close the window, Carol stops her. The window must remain open because Harvey likes it open. The name hangs in the air. "Who is Harvey, my goldfish?" Carol replies with the same calm matter-of-factness she brought to the empty glasses in the latter story. The introduction of Harvey is the moment when the audience understands that Carol's eccentricity is not limited to professional restraint or social self-consciousness. It extends into the realm of the openly peculiar. Lucille Ball's performance throughout this entire sequence is a study in reactive generosity. She never undercuts Carol. She never rolls her eyes for the camera in a way that would invite the audience to despise the newcomer. Instead, she listens with the full intensity of a woman who desperately wants this arrangement to succeed. Her face registers surprise, then amusement, then a growing awareness that the refined librarian of the letter is also a woman who wears empty glasses frames, who waits hours to yell for help, who sneezes like a sonic event, and who travels with a goldfish that has opinions about ventilation. The comedy arises from the collision between Lucy's hopeful ideal and the concrete reality standing in her living room. Yet the collision is never cruel. The series, true to its essential kindness, allows both women their dignity, even as it mines their differences for laughter. The cultural texture of the mid-1960s deepens every beat. Single women sharing apartments was still a relatively new and slightly daring social arrangement, freighted with questions of respectability, finances, and personal compatibility. Carol's profession as a librarian carried automatic connotations of quiet intelligence and moral reliability. The empty glasses frames speak to the era's complicated relationship with female vanity. Contact lenses were modern and slightly glamorous. Yet a woman who wore them openly might be suspected of excessive concern with appearance. Carol's solution to hide the modernity behind the traditional symbol of scholarly spectacles is both ingenious and faintly tragic. The library stories themselves evoke a public institution that still operated according to strict codes of silence and decorum, codes that a woman of Carol's temperament would absorb into her very personality. By the time the sequence draws toward its close, the audience has been given a complete and affectionate portrait of Carol Bradford in the space of a few carefully written minutes. She is refined and ridiculous, considerate to a fault, physically explosive in ways she cannot control, and possessed of a dry wit that surfaces at unexpected moments. Lucy, watching her, has already begun the internal negotiation that will define the rest of their shared story. The recognition that the perfect roommate on paper is a living, breathing, sneezing, furniture rearranging human being whose presence will transform the apartment and the life within it. Lucille Ball's genius lies in making that recognition visible without a single word of direct commentary. Her eyes, her posture, the small adjustments of her smile, all communicate the simultaneous delight and mild panic of a woman who has opened her door to adventure and is only just beginning to understand what that adventure will cost and what it will give in return. The broken glasses, the ladder story, the loud finger wetters, the cataclysmic sneeze, and the first mention of Harvey the goldfish form a perfect comic arc of introduction. Each detail is specific, each is rooted in character, and each is performed with the impeccable timing that made Lucille Ball the preeminent physical comedian of her generation. The sequence does not rush. It allows the audience to live inside the apartment with the two women, to feel the social awkwardness, the tentative warmth, and the gathering sense that ordinary domestic life is about to become considerably less ordinary. In doing so, it fulfills the deepest promise of The Lucy Show, that the everyday collisions of human personality, when observed with affection and precise comic intelligence, can become a form of art that is both hilarious and strangely moving.